Okay, so I came across this story online, and it is genuinely one of the most terrifying things I've read in a long, long time. We're going to break it down because it starts out sounding like a simple, creepy story, but it quickly turns into something else, something that really gets under your skin.
Right off the bat, it hits you with that line. I mean, that's a nightmare scenario, right? Finding a hidden camera in your most private space. But believe me, this is just the beginning, and it gets so much weirder. So here's the first clue that something is really off. You'd think, okay, a hidden camera, it's gotta be on the Wi-Fi. But no. No internet, no Bluetooth, nothing. So how is it even working? And then you get this bombshell. Not only is it not connected to the internet, it's not connected to power. No wires, no battery pack, nothing. I mean, at this point, it shouldn't be anything more than a piece of plastic. It shouldn't be working. And that's the final piece of the puzzle that just shatters everything. This impossible little device with no power and no internet has been sitting there silently watching and recording for 3 solid years. So how in the world did they even find this thing? Well, it all started with a tiny little detail, something you or I would probably ignore. In a brand new apartment that was supposed to be a fresh start. The setup is just so normal, you know? Our narrator moves into a new place in Chicago. It's an old building, rent's cheap, a story we've all heard a million times. Everything seems totally fine for the first couple of weeks. And then, one night, they spot it. Just this tiny little blinking red light up on the ceiling, right near the smoke detector. And what's your first thought? Oh, it's probably just a sensor or something. You just ignore it, right? But it kept nagging at them. So they grab a chair, they climb up to get a closer look, and that's the moment. That's when the floor falls out from under them. It's not a sensor, it's a lens, and it's pointed right at their bed. So they managed to pull this thing out of the ceiling. And this is where the story goes from just creepy to downright impossible. The mystery isn't just that there was a camera, it's what this camera was. It was a thing that, honestly, just shouldn't exist. And this is where your brain just starts to short circuit. Think about any camera you've ever used. Your phone, a webcam, whatever. It needs power, right? And it needs a way to save what it sees. This device had nothing. No wires running into the ceiling, no battery pack, zero. It should have been completely dead. But when they open it up, there's one thing inside. A little memory card. And that's it. That's the only clue. At this point, what else can you do? You have to see what's on it. So they take the card, plug it into a computer, and what they find is, well, it's a history that's so much longer and so much more messed up than they ever could have guessed. The video files go back for 3 entire years. This camera wasn't put there for them. It had been watching everyone who lived in that room for a long, long time. A silent roommate nobody knew about. And laying out the timeline just makes it even more chilling. It starts 3 years ago with strangers just living their lives, completely unaware. Then, 2 weeks ago, it's our narrator who starts appearing in the videos. In the most recent file, it was from last night. But it's not just that it was recording, it's how it was recording. As they start watching the footage, night after night, they notice this pattern, something that happens every single time, and it's completely unexplainable. Yep, every single night, right around 3 a.m., you know, the witching hour, something weird happens in the footage. The camera itself moves, not like a jolt or a shake, a slow, smooth, deliberate turn. And remember, this thing has no motor, no power. It just turns on its own. This is the part that pushes the whole story into a different league of creepy. How is that possible? There's just no way a device like this could physically move itself every single night. And it wasn't random. The movement had a purpose. It always turned to point directly at the bed, focusing right on whoever was sleeping. And it wasn't triggered by noise or movement because it happened even when the person was lying perfectly still. It was like it was intelligent. So all of this builds up to the very last video on the card. Because, look, watching strangers being recorded is creepy enough, but the last file makes this whole thing personal, immediate, and absolutely horrifying.
The sequence starts just like all the others. The video is from the night before. It shows our narrator fast asleep in their own bed. And then, right on schedule, 3 a.m. hits, and that impossible camera starts to make its slow turn, pointing right at them. But this time, there was something different in the video. Something that wasn't there before. Something that suddenly explained everything and made it 1,000 times worse. The camera wasn't moving by itself. In the grainy video from just a few hours earlier, you can see a person standing right there in the room, reaching up and physically turning the camera to get a better angle. And in that instance, the supernatural horror just vanishes, replaced by something so much worse, a real human threat. The impossible camera was never the real monster. It was just the tool. And that just brings this whole nightmare to a terrifying point. The person watching wasn't a ghost. It's a real person, a person who was standing in their room last night, and a person who probably knows by now that the camera's gone. So this is where the story leaves us. And it really forces you to put yourself in their shoes. It taps into this deep, modern fear we all have about being watched, about our privacy being invaded. But it also shows that the scariest things aren't ghosts or demons. Sometimes it's just another person, which brings us to the final question. Knowing that someone was in your room while you were asleep, knowing they might come back, could you stay there for another night?